LA Kings fans react to this week's shows, plus Jersey talk, that and more on this fan feedback edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also one of the co-hosts of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show, now in its 20th year of putting out a show each and every week. I'm also a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. It is time for another Kings fan feedback show. Your chance to complain, praise, question, celebrate, and pontificate about our Los Angeles Kings. Let's start with Milton in Rancho, Santa Margarita. He says, great job on the pod. I'm an everydayer, but only when I'm able to listen, so I'm about a week behind. Regarding the July 24th podcast, you missed the point of the article by Don L. from The Athletic ranking the NHL teams by their offseason moves. The question was who improved by their offseason moves. In that regard, and that fact alone, the Kings didn't improve. They had the most season points in franchise history and lost their second pairing D via trade or free agency. Spending the same for what can be argued are lesser players on D is not wise. Yes, the article failed to mention the fourth line additions of Perry and Armia, but if you're holding on to the fourth line additions as the plus, then it reinforces how poorly the Kings spent to the cap. Keep in mind that the Stanley Cup winning Panthers ranked 23rd on the list, and they're running it back for the most part. I'm also disappointed in your assessment of Gavrikov. He was a first pairing D for the Kings while Drew was injured last year. The fact that Drew stupidly played first pairing minutes while injured is an indictment of the coaching staff catering to Drew versus doing what was best for the team. It may have been a factor in why Gavrikov chose New York, especially if the numbers were the same. I equate to most workplaces. Bosses rarely see how integral a team member is until they're gone, and the same happens in sports. Perhaps that's driving your point of view as well. You're too close to the team, and you can't see how good of a first pairing D actually was for the team. Lastly, the Cardinal report, sourced by West Coast Bias, emphasized the quality of life in NHL cities. I've never been to Winnipeg or Buffalo, so I can't speak to how much better those cities are than LA. However, if New York is the worst NHL city via the report, and Gavrikov still signed there, then there are more things happening within the Kings organization that we'll never know. I agree, it's absurd. So taking that report for what it's worth, it all points to the Kings system or playing style and coaches. Not actively mentioned, but it could also be the residual fallout of the PLD trade. Players and agents talk, and the fact that PLD and the Kings couldn't mesh for his lone season in LA and then gets traded after year one of an 8-year deal shines negatively on the front office, whether it's Blake or Holland running the team. Keep up the great work. And that was Milton in Rancho, Santa Margarita. Well, I don't think I missed the point of the Athletic article at all. I just disagree with it. The Kings improved their fourth line. They arguably improved their backup goalie, and they probably took a step back defensively. How big of a step back? We'll see. It is the strongest part of their team. So if there was a place that they could step back, I guess you could argue it's their defense. I have no problem if the opinion is the Kings didn't get better this offseason. I do have a problem saying that they got a lot worse. To rank them as the worst offseason in the NHL, I don't see it. Like I said, I wouldn't expect them to be very high on the list, but I don't think they were dead last either. As for Gavrikov, I've said repeatedly that he had a great season last year. That said, I do think he would be naive, and maybe you too, Milton, if you really thought that when Drew Doughty came back from injury, he wasn't going to go right back to being on the top pairing. I'm not saying I agree with it, but we all knew that was going to happen. And if Gavrikov was surprised by that, then I would be surprised by that. Doughty was going to get his job back. There was no question about it. Whether he deserved it or not is certainly up for debate. And whether he should have continued to get the minutes that he was getting, I would say was not the correct move by the coaching staff. And if Gavrikov was upset about that, I can understand that. But again, I would be surprised if he didn't think Drew Doughty, a future Hall of Famer, wasn't going to get his top pairing job back when he came back from injury. So I would say, as far as pointing out the style of play that the Kings have, or some deficiencies in the front office that are keeping players from coming here, I would agree with that if you were talking about forwards. If you're talking about offensive players not wanting to come here because of the Kings' style of play or because of the coaching, and they can't get the numbers, maybe they can get somewhere else, and that equates to dollars. That makes total sense to me. The flip side of that, though, is if that is the case, then defensive players and goalies should want to come to LA because their numbers will be better, and that equates to more money for them. And I don't see that happening either. I don't see the Kings signing all the top free agent defensemen and goaltenders. So I don't know what it is. It's probably, like I've said before, a combination of different things. But that's the way I see it. That's the way I see what we've been talking about as far as Gavrikov and teams not signing in LA, and also grading the Kings offseason. Eric in Jefferson Park says, any chance you would ever do an interview with Dieter Rule? Forgive the pun, but that guy rules. That was Eric in Jefferson Park. Well, Dieter does in fact rule. I'm a big fan of Dieter, does a wonderful job as the musical director and organist for both the Kings and the Dodgers. I have had him on the show twice over the 3+ years that I've done it. So you could go back and check out those interviews. I'm more than happy to have him on again. That said, I kind of feel like I've asked him all the questions that need to be asked. We've talked about how he got into the business and what goes into the day-to-day work that he does for a game and things like that. So I will say this. If you guys want to have Dieter Rule on in an interview and you want to ask him the questions, I will absolutely see if he's interested in doing that. So I'll tell you what, if I get 10 good questions for Dieter Rule, I'll ask him to come back on the show, and we will have a fan question show for King's musical director and organist, Dieter Rule. And Dieter, if you might be listening, which he sometimes does, hello. Alan in Santa Rosa says, every day you're here, just want to say great few last episodes. Thank you, Alan. Really hope the Kings can re-sign Juice to that contract extension ASAP. I want my next jersey to be a white Kings Chevy logo Kempe jersey that I can wear up here in NoCal. I feel that he's earned the next captain spot and should be made a King for life. Considering how hard it is to sign free agents in LA, let's keep our homegrown guys. Also, were you a big EA Sports NHL video game nut in the 90s like myself? I also think a Kings-based fantasy hockey name contest would be awesome considering the dog days of the NHL offseason are here. Keep up the good work, Eddie. And that was Alan in Santa Rosa. I don't know if I mentioned it or not. You guys probably know I am a jersey collector. I love hockey jerseys. I love Kings jerseys. I recently ordered an Adrien Kempe Four Nations Face-Off Sweden jersey. Quick story and shout out to Ryan Kim, who's a fan of the show. He told me in our LA Kings extra chat about hockeyauthentic.com. That's why I ordered my Kempe jersey. And I got to say, I haven't gotten the jersey yet to check out the work, but the customer service has been awesome. Within 15 minutes of me submitting my order, I got a text from a guy at Hockey Authentic, and he said, hey, just wanted to ask, you ordered a Kempe number 9 Four Nations face-off jersey. Kempe actually wore number 10. Would you like to have number 9, or would you like number 10 that he wore in the Four Nations? I was like, oh my God, I had forgotten about that. Yes, I would like the number 10 instead of his usual number 9. And they said, absolutely, we'll do that. And I thought that was amazing. That was so cool that they knew that. They didn't just take my order verbatim, and they wanted to check in on that. So that was very, very cool. So can't wait to wear my Sweden Kempe jersey on the show. Maybe I'll save it for the show where he signs that contract extension. And that will be the celebration of that one. To answer your question, yes, I was a big EA Sports NHL video game fan. Have not played it in a while. I think the last one I bought was the 2020 version with Austin Matthews on the cover. But yeah, I was a big fan of the NHL EA Sports game for sure. Gary in Orange says, I enjoyed your Ask Eddie and the Kings versus Ducks flashback episode. I went to game 1 and game 4 of that 2014 semifinal against the Ducks. I would have gone to game 7, but I was hosting a poker tournament at my house that night and didn't want to cancel it. Little known fact of game 1 of that series, in the middle of the game, the Kings didn't have a shot on goal for 17 straight minutes. My question for you is regarding our team depth, especially on defense. I'm a little worried that injuries could hit our defense this year, and we might not be able to recover without any defensive prospects. Who are NHL ready, do you think, to step in the event of injury to our D? And that was Gary in Orange. So wait a minute, Gary, you missed game 7 against the Ducks for a poker tournament? I don't know about that decision, my man. As for the Kings' defensive depth, they do have a couple of guys who have seen NHL time that could step in, certainly in the second or third pairings if necessary. Jacob Moharara on the left side and Kyle Burroughs on the right side. Caleb Jones was a player who had NHL experience. He left in the offseason. I think he went to Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. The only other option that I would see in the organization other than Moharara or Burroughs would be maybe Joe Hicketts. He's 29 years old. He's played 22 NHL games. He's a veteran AHLer. As far as young prospects, I don't think anyone's ready for that. I mean, if there was one guy, maybe Angus Booth, but he's still really young. I think he's an NHL level defenseman at some point, but it's not right now. So again, Jacob Moharara and Kyle Burroughs are the two depth defensemen for the LA Kings going into the season. And maybe those two guys are battling for that one extra defensive spot on the roster going into training camp. All right, just getting started with your emails. We'll continue next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets fast and easy. Prices actually drop the closer you get to showtime. You can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Gametime's zone deals pick the best seat in the section for you. You ever wonder what your view is going to look like before you buy? The app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there's no surprises. With Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Worried about what happens if plans change? The Gametime guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Brian in Los Alamitos checking in says, in 1994, the Kings drafted an enforcer named Matt Johnson. He stood 6'5" and was an incredibly strong and skilled fighter. He once was suspended 12 games for sucker punching former Oiler and Ranger Jeff Bukaboom. The hit contributed to Bukaboom's premature retirement. After 5 years in LA, Johnson went on to play for the Atlanta Thrashers, then the Minnesota Wild. After playing in Minnesota for 4 years, he decided he no longer wanted to play hockey or be an enforcer and unfortunately retired in 2005. Later, Johnson became estranged from his parents and he struggled with post-hockey life, eventually returning to Southern California, specifically Santa Monica, where he was last seen living on the streets in 2017. He has not been seen or heard from since. I read stories about his parents venturing down to LA from Canada in an effort to try and find their son with no luck. Was just wondering if you ever heard about Matt Johnson, his struggles with mental issues, and his disappearance. Is he still wandering the streets? Is he even alive? As a Kings fan, this has always been a very, very sad story for me. I imagine some players, the role of enforcer, it's unwanted, but they're forced into it because of their size. Wherever Matt Johnson is, I hope he is alive and doing well. On a side note, I heard the Ontario Reign signed a forward from Japan. His name is Kenta Isog. He was at development camp, and who knows, might play for the Kings one day. As always, thanks for another great week of shows. That was Brian in Los Alamitos. I do remember Matt Johnson playing for the Kings. I do know of his sad story. There is a YouTube report from, I believe, up in Canada called Searching for Matt Johnson, which kind of details his story and has interviews with his parents. The last news I saw of him was he was arrested in 2018 in Santa Monica on a vandalism charge. And that's the last I've seen of any news regarding Matt Johnson. So yeah, it's a very sad story, dealing with mental illness. Maybe his job in the NHL contributed to that. There was also maybe some issues with, prescription painkiller abuse that probably came from him playing in the NHL as well. So certainly, hopefully things have progressed. Obviously, that enforcer role is really not a part of the NHL anymore, and probably better off for it, to be honest. I did not see the news about the Japanese player that you mentioned until you mentioned it. I looked it up, and you're right. Kenta Isog signed a 2-year deal with the Reign. It's an AHL contract. The Kings didn't sign him, so he's signed by the Reign. He's a forward, 20 years old, born in Nagano, Japan. Played the last few years, I should say, in the Western Hockey League. Last year, he had 32 goals in 59 games. So we'll keep an eye out and an ear out for Kenta Isog, a Japanese player playing for the Ontario Reign. Daario in Arizona says, really enjoyed your All Kings Name podcast. You named some great names. Gotta love hockey names. That reminded me of my all-time top 5 favorite Kings players. Number 1, Anze Kopitar. Number 2, Juha Whiting, who was my first favorite Kings player. Number 3, Tony Granato. Number 4, Charlie Simmer. Number 5, Glenn Murray. Honorable mentions, Mike Krushelnyski, Yari Curry, Butch Goring, and Adam Deadmarsh. And that was Daario in Arizona. I am very familiar with all those names except one, Juha Whiting. So I had to look him up. Unfortunately, he died of a heart attack at the age of 37. Born in Finland, he played 8 years for the Kings, a little before my time, but 502 games in an LA Kings uniform, and he was a center. Juha Whiting. All right. Andy in Guelph, Ontario, checking in. He says, just wanted to share, I got a jersey. My buddy found a website called coolhockey.ca, and I had it mailed custom within 5 days. Didn't realize they would be releasing a new third jersey this fall, but hey, another excuse to buy one in the future. Don't tell my wife. I'm a Mike Fuda fan, so glad for you to have him on the show. I'm getting more and more excited for the season and will fully back this team despite CC on the roster. If you had to make one bold prediction for this year, what would it be? Hockey aside for a second, I know you're not a baseball guy. I just wanted to say go Jays go this weekend. Huge Kings fan, but I have to back the Blue Jays over the Dodgers. Sorry, LA. That was Andy in Guelph. Now, Andy, you can't tell us you bought a new jersey and not give us the full details on what the jersey was. So maybe I missed out on that, but maybe it was a follow-up from an earlier email, but I want to know what was the jersey that you bought. You want a bold prediction for next season? How about Trevor Moore will score 25 goals next season? Is that a bold prediction? We'll see. Would love to see it. Frank in Rancho's Palos Verdes says, I'm sending you this email before watching the episode of Great Names to see what names come to mind. Mine are Bart Crashley, Adam Deadmarsh, and Ziggy Palffy. Bart Crashley is a good one. I should have had him at least on the honorable mention, but I did have Deadmarsh and Palffy. One other note, I just watched a podcast where the host has over 1,000 jerseys, and it just happened to be a day where he went over the Kings catalog of jerseys, which he rated as the best collection in the entire NHL, which I totally agree with. I'm including on this email pics of my top 4 jerseys. The 5th is a jersey I don't own, the OG 1967 Forum blue jersey. Would like to know your top 5 jerseys, Kings, of course. Take care, Frank in RPV. Well, I'm wearing my number 1 Kings jersey if you're watching on YouTube. So my top 5 would be the 2022-23 reverse retro, the white jersey with the purple crown on the front. I would say number 2 is the 2014 Stadium Series jersey that they wore at Dodger Stadium, the gray jersey with the silver crown on the front and the black letters. Also a fan of the 2021 purple reverse retro with the silver Chevy logo on the front. I would also go with the number 2 jersey on your list. I know people didn't see it, but it's the purple jersey with the silver crown on the front. It's got the tie at the neck. They wore that from 1999 to 2002 as like a third alternate jersey. I've got that one. I like that one. Finally, they had the 2007, 2008 white and black jerseys, but they had purple on the shoulders and on the stripes with the silver crown on the chest. I always want the crown logo on the chest, and I don't mind the black and white jerseys so much, but I do like a little color mixed in, and those jerseys did have that. So that's my top 5 all-time favorite Kings jerseys. We've got your final group of emails coming up. That's next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Bill Anderson is checking in from Winnetka. And I wanted to mention this on an earlier email that Bill sent in. There was an old like Civil War. I don't think he was a general, but he was like a very famous Civil War leader. They called him Bloody Bill, and he was one of those guys that, like, you know, when the Union finally defeated the Confederacy, he was like a guy, he wouldn't surrender, and he kind of continued wreaking havoc with skirmishes and whatnot until he was finally tracked down and killed. Bloody Bill Anderson. I remember. I'm a history guy. I kind of like that stuff. Oh, Bill, does anyone they ever call you Bloody Bill? Anyway, he says, I just listened to, sorry, Bill. I just listened to Thursday's podcast. UC Jokinen got a mention. Trivia, as part of his time with the Kings in 2017-18, he tied an NHL record. What was it? That's his trivia question on UC Jokinen. He says, question, the LA Kings announced a new rink in Reseda years ago. I've seen some work in the area, but I haven't heard an update in quite a while. I know nothing about the rink in Reseda, so I apologize there. He says, for the trivia answer, read UC Jokinen's Wikipedia page. And that was Bill Anderson, Bloody Bill in Winnetka. I went to UC Jokinen's Wikipedia page, and the only thing I saw was not something that happened while he was with the LA Kings. So you're going to have to email next week and give us the answer. But I did see during the 2009 Stanley Cup playoffs, April 21st, UC Jokinen scored the latest regulation game-winning goal in NHL playoff history. He scored with 0.2 seconds left in the third period to lead the Hurricanes over the Devils 4-3 in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference quarterfinals. So that's the only unique fun fact I saw about UC Jokinen. And I do remember he was like a shootout specialist. Like, if you wanted a guy, you know, to help to score a goal in a shootout, he was your guy. He was like one of the best ever at that. I do remember that about him. John checking in from Parts Unknown. He says, good afternoon, Eddie. Let's kick this email off with a question. Is there a name for the logo that was used from like 1998 through 2002? It's like the Shield logo right before we went to the Crown. In fact, I think the Crown has the Shield logo on the shoulders. Also, here's some varying perspective from your own. One way you could look at a player signing is it's not so much what the Kings paid him, but how much the player cost. If CC is getting offers at $4.5 million, then that's what it cost, opposed to what the Kings paid. I know it's the same, but perspective is important. It's not like the Kings went out there and threw a ton of money when the dude had no offers. In that same vein, it's not that players don't want to come to LA. It's that players might want to go somewhere else specifically. Gavrikov is a great example of this, a player who definitely wanted to go to New York. It wasn't that he didn't want LA. It was that he wanted New York. There's a big difference. Can't wait for the season. I, along with many other Kings fans who might not be as vocal, believe the team is better than last season. Top three lines are solid. Fourth line significantly improved. Second pairing defense might take a small step backward, but the third pairing defense took a step forward. We've got plenty of youth ready to flourish. And that was John in Parts Unknown. As far as I know, that logo that you're talking about is just called the Shield. I don't know that it has any other name. I know that there's the Burger King jersey and there's the Chevy logo jersey. But yeah, I just think it's known as the Shield. I don't know if anybody else has any info on that, they can pass that along. Maybe the crest. I don't know. It's one of my least favorite jersey logos, though, to be honest. It probably is my least favorite, other than maybe the Burger King jersey. So I get what you're saying about Cody Ceci in general, but I think as a GM, and I've never had that job and I never will, unless something really wacky happens, I would have a certain set number for certain positions that I just would never go over unless it was something really unique or just an opportunity that you couldn't pass up for whatever reason. I would not pay $4 million or more for a third pairing defenseman ever. I wouldn't. There's certain slots for certain players, and I wouldn't do that. So I understand why it was done, and I'm not saying there weren't other teams interested in Cody Ceci. I'm sure there were. It's just like when, a player is looking for a contract and he signs a certain deal and you're like, oh, I thought he could have got more somewhere else. Apparently not, if that's the contract that he took. And sometimes there's circumstances surrounding that. They want to play in a certain area, but usually if you get the contract you get is usually the best one you're getting offered, usually. Ed in Brea checks in. He says, hey, wanted to clear something up since you posted a video about the Kings beating the Ducks in the playoffs. I don't want the Quacks winning the cup, but I fear them because destiny is on their side, sadly. I got to stop you, Ed, and I got to ask you to explain what that means because I don't understand what you're saying. How is destiny on their side? And I don't want to sound mean when I say this, but do you know what the word destiny means? Because I don't know why would destiny favor the Ducks based on what? I know you live in the OC. I know you have a lot of friends that are Ducks fans, and I know your life would be miserable if the Ducks were to win a cup. And I know you fear that, like you fear the boogeyman, but I don't understand. You use the word destiny a lot, and I don't know how it applies to the Ducks. If you wanted to say that about the Oilers, I guess you could say that, right? That it's destiny for the Kings to lose to the Oilers. We've certainly seen that a lot lately. I don't know that actually still is the correct definition, but I would kind of understand where you were going with that. But I don't get the Ducks thing. I really don't. And you could have argued when the Kings faced the Ducks in the playoffs that destiny was on the Ducks side because all the other things favored them. They were the lower seed. They had home ice. They had won the regular season series. And guess how that turned out? So much for destiny. Anyway, Ed continues. He says, the series win was special because it corrected a wrong with the Quacks winning the cup earlier. And the hockey universe is now fixed because the Kings should have been the first California team to win the cup. Winning the second cup validates it because the Kings have now won more cups. Living in the OC has not been easy. I've been trolled many times by hockey teammates that I support the wrong team since they view the Kings as not so nice. Without Gretzky, there would be no Quacks in Anaheim since it was Kings ownership at the time that wanted a second team. Then the rest is history. Also, Josh Schaefer is a cool dude and a wonderful play-by-play announcer. Met him many times last season. As for the current TV announcer situation, I have a theory on that. However, I will save that for the next feedback show. Also, I'm still intrigued by you and me one-on-one shootout style, the glory of competition, and may the best man win. Have a wonderful weekend and go Kings go always, Ed in Brea. I'm still up for that, Ed. If you want to get out there on the court and I'll dust off my rollerblades and we'll get out there and I'll take some shots on you and see who can stop who. I do not believe Kings ownership wanted a second team in Southern California because why would they want that? Why would they want any competition for their dollars? So it was the NHL that wanted a team in Anaheim. And more specifically, it was the NHL that wanted that Disney money coming into the league. And that's why the Ducks came into existence. Thank you to everyone who took the time to email this week. The show is literally not possible without your participation. If you want to get an email in for a future feedback show or for any other reason, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can always leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comment section as well. And we'd love you to stay interact with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. And if you are interested in some extra Kings content and supporting your host, email me, lakingsextra@gmail.com. I will happily give you all the details on that. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings go.